Hello, and thank you for joining me for yet another video. One of the many questions I've asked, and the purpose of today's video, is what is Fortilink? What does it mean to a customer? Why would you use it? And what benefit does it provide? So Fortilink is effectively a software-defined networking framework. It allows a single FortiGate or a pair of FortiGates, a high availability pair of FortiGates, to manage up to, depending on the size of the FortiGate, up to 300 switches. And again, depending on the size of the FortiGate, up to 4,000 access points. And as well as our FortiExtenders, and off the top of my head I can't remember how many the maximum for those is, but the point is that your wired, your wireless, and your LTE is all managed from a single IP address, and that IP address is the FortiGate firewall. As we are a security first vendor, we don't draw the definition between a security device and a network device. For us, security doesn't start and end in any one place. It is an end-to-end concept, right? So you look at security from the minute in fact, even before a device connects to the network. You want to understand what its security posture is. We then want to assign it a policy before it connects to the network. Then based on those two, we then connect it to the network, and then we continue to monitor that device and devices throughout their entire interaction with that network, right? So again, we're about building secure networks versus networks with security. Now, security breaks down when things are complex. So if we can manage the entire network as a single IP address, and we can extend all that security capability of the FortiGate right down to the endpoint, then one, we make things easier to manage. We reduce the customer's cost as well as complexity, and cost is reduced by not having to have different licensing and contracts with different hardware vendors and all these. You've got one choke to throat. You go to one vendor, and that vendor gives you your security, your wireless, and your wired. All right. So we take FortiGates are the default of what we call our Fortilink fabric, right? So if you've got FortiGates today, you may not be using them for switches or wireless. You could just be using them as a firewall or for SD-WAN or explicit proxy or whatever other normal security use case, but then you decide, hey, you know what, I want to add some switches. So you add a couple of Forti switches, and they've got to be Fortinet switches, right? We can work with any vendor switch, but this automation, this security dynamic management framework only works with Forti switches and Forti APs, as you'd expect. We're Fortinet. Why would we go to the trouble of building in a SDN framework for another vendor's product? That's up to them to do, right? For us, this is our switches and our access points. So you plug in Forti switches. Now, I've got here MC-lag. This is just one use case. There's no limit to the type of topologies you can use. You can have ring, hub, spoke, spine, leaf, multi-chassis lag, multi-chassis lag, tiered. It's up to you entirely. This is just a use case. So you plug the switches in. The switches and the FortiGates exchange LLDP. That's how they discover each other. LLDP, link layer discovery protocol, obviously is a layer 2 protocol. And once they share the relevant TLVs to say, yeah, we Fortinet both sides, then VLAN 4094 is reserved, and a DTLS communication channel, which is Fortilink, is set up between the FortiGate and the Forti switches. The FortiGates then subsume those switches into the management framework. All right, and now those Forti switches are no longer standalone switches. They now become an extension of the FortiGate. We can grow that out. We can put in another layer of MC-lag switches. Same thing happens again. LLDP discovers 4094 is extended downstream to them. If it's multi-chassis lag, they automatically discover the number of links, and they just automatically create a trunk group or a lag group, or if you come from that world, a port channel group between the different tiers. And we can have up to 3 tiers of multi-chassis lag. And then you get down to your access layer where you put in your access switches, which could be a spanning tree ring here, or in this case, it would be a stack of, say, 600 series. Now, the benefits of a stack is that we can continue with the loop-free topology because a stack operates as a single switch. So we could take a lag member from the top switch, a lag member from the bottom switch, dual home them up to this multi-chassis lag layer here. And I don't have a spanning tree domain here. All right, it's a loop-free topology. The attitude of 3AD deals with all of that. The multi-chassis lag deals with all of that. So I'm not having to worry about introducing spanning tree loops into the environment. Now, if you did put another 40 switch here, and you link them between these two, we haven't turned spanning tree off, all right? We're simply just not leveraging it in this background, but it's still running at the edge port, so it would detect a loop and it would block one of those links, all right? Same thing, we add access points and our LTE devices, our FortiExtenders. They're also discovered via Fortilink. They're subsumed into the same management framework, and now you've got one IP address to manage all of this, all right? So to put that in context, and remember what I said, the very largest FortiGates can manage up to 300 switches, but every single FortiGate has got a number of switches that it can manage. And you can find that on if you look up Fortinet Matrix, you will get a list of all the FortiGates and the number of switches and access points and LTEs that they can manage. But on the largest ones, we can manage up to 300 switches, and to put that in context, 300 times 48 is 14,400 Ethernet ports. Now, I've personally never seen a customer deploy that many, but that's what we've QA tested it to. So let's have a quick look at that. So here is a FortiGate. This one in my labs, and you can see here that here is my Fortilink port here. It's called switch ports. There is a default one called Fortilink, which you can use. You can simply put ports in there. There's a long story as to why I've got this, but it's to do with the demo environment. But I could quite easily move the ports from the switch ports into the default Fortilink. It makes no difference. It's irrelevant. The functionality is exactly the same. These switches, multi-chassis lag core here, these have been automatically discovered. Then I've got a single switch here, dual homed, and then a ring hanging off there. The point is, this may seem obscure topology, but it was just done just to prove the point that we really don't care what topology you use. You can plug and play with these things. I could hang another one off with fiber optic off this switch, down to another building or whatever, and it would automatically appear on this dashboard. Now, clearly this is just a topology view. It's not how you're going to manage the switches. I can get a list of the devices if I want to see their serial numbers and their models and so forth. But you manage them via the ports here. So I've got a filter running here, which is why it's only showing those. But if I collapse all of that, you can see here's all my ports, and then I can expand those ports, and I can see the ports in each individual switch. Okay. If I want to make adds, moves, and changes, all right, let's say, for example, I wanted to move these ports here into another VLAN. I simply come along here. I choose my VLAN. Let's call it doesn't matter which one I use. I click Apply Changes, and they're done. Simple as that. All right. If I want to see which ports are assigned to a specific VLAN, I can simply come along here, do as the filter. You can see these are all the filters that I can use. Click native VLAN, and I can go FDC, apply. Was that the name of that VLAN? It's a loud VLAN, you see. So I made that a trunk, so it was my fault. If I come along here, I've got a loud VLANs, and let's do that correctly this time. And there we go. All right. If I change that and I go, I know there's a VLAN that is managing my access points. So if I come along here and go access point, there's my ports that are in managing my wireless access ports. All right. So you've got a whole lot of very simple filtering capabilities here. I just want to take those before I forget out of that FDC again. So I'm just going to take them out of there. that in the something other than that one, because I'm using that for something else. Into the default. Apply changes. Okay, and then all of a sudden that's gone from the filter because they're no longer part and parcel of that filter anymore. So if I clear that filter, again, I've got full visibility. Now, this is me managing these switches on the FortiGate directly, all right? On a large-scale environment, we wouldn't be doing it here. We were doing it on FortiManager. FortiManager is our management platform that can manage many thousands of FortiGates and all the switches associated with that many thousands of FortiGate. It is, again, a single pane of glass. It allows templating of switches, access points, SSIDs, all of that. It's outside of the scope of this video. The idea was to keep this video brief, all right, and just give you a view of what Fortilink is and what it does to the environment. You can see here I've got a single, again, this is simply my demo environment in my lab. So right now nothing's attached there because I'm sitting at home. But here is my, my access point that's connected, and I've got a single SSID, but I can have up to 16 SSIDs. And if I come along here and I hover over that, you can see that this FortiGate can manage 4,096 access points in bridge mode or 2,048 in tunnel mode, or you can have a mixture of both. So it's not an either or. I can have some SSIDs in bridge mode, other SSIDs in tunnel mode. So let's say, for example, you've got guests come into the environment. You'd rather have those in a tunneled VLAN, a tunneled SSID, so that the SSID is all DTLS tunneled to the FortiGate. Then you do that for your guests, but for your normal users, you could potentially just have them in bridged mode, where the SSID is directly mapped to the VLAN associated with it, which is what I've got here. Okay, I've got a local bridge here. Okay, now if I come along here, you've got all your different aspects. There's my VLAN ID is 100. And we've got all the control profiles that you could want for the SSID here. Now, your VLANs are configured on the FortiGate as well. You can see I've got a whole raft of VLANs. Here's that FTC VLAN that I chose earlier on. Okay, and you simply come into a VLAN, you create the VLAN, you give it a name, you give it a VLAN ID, you give it an IP address, what its management thing is going to be, DHCP server, there's advanced functions there as well. And then there's some advanced features here. And the one I really like from a security perspective is this here, block intra-VLAN traffic. The minute I hit that button, there is no more east-west communication between devices on the same VLAN. It is effectively private VLANs without all the complexity of managing private VLANs. Private VLANs, I'd have to create a community port, a private ports and promiscuous ports. Here I don't have to do that. Here I simply hit the block intra-VLAN traffic from that one radio button, and straight away I've blocked any margin that ransomware would have to spread east and west, or any other nasty malware in your environment. It simply can't. Now all traffic goes up to the FortiGate. Remember, the FortiGate is the layer 3 entity for all those VLANs. So any device connecting to a switch, wanting to go to a VLAN on another switch, comes up to the FortiGate and gets switched that way. So this is no different to having your great big chassis layer 3 switch in your environment. It's just now that we've taken that layer 3 switch and we've put it in the FortiGate, all right, into the firewalls. Now remember that a FortiGate is an ASIC accelerated firewall. Our current generation of ASICs or network processing units is the NP7, Network Processor 7. That ASIC does 200 gigabits per second of throughput with between 2 and 5 microseconds of latency. So you're talking the same sort of latency as a layer 3 switch, but now we've got layer 2 through to layer 7 security built in there. And the reason I say we've got layer 2 security is because we've got NAC here as well. So I can create detailed NAC profiles for devices connecting. So what is the hardware vendor, device family, operating system. And because the switches and access points are an extension of the FortiGate, we have the ability to identify devices that are connected to it, right? Because we know what's connecting to the device. We go out and we interrogate what's connecting to the device, so we can get a huge amount of detail about the devices that are connecting to the environment. All right. So I can see here, for example, this Linux machine here, that it's registered. This is actually running a FortiClient, which is our next point. I can see what tags it's got associated, security tags, and I can use those security tags as part of the NAC posture. So the security tag defines whether or not this device is compliant with whatever security posture I have defined as to be trustworthy in the environment. And then again, I can use that security tag within the NAC profile. So I can come along here, and the EMS tag, here's all the tags that it's discovered. All right. And I can use whichever one that was. So here, for example, these are all my trusted tags. And I can say if your tag is within the adults, and these are tags I use for my family to protect my family, then put that device into a relevant VLAN. Now, if that device's security posture changes, their tag will change, and that device, that endpoint, will immediately get taken out of the network and placed into an isolation VLAN. So that was just a quick overview of Fortilink and what it means to you from a customer perspective. One other thing to realize is that a FortiGate, or to be aware of rather, not to realize, is that a FortiGate can be broken down for free, no extra license incurred. A hardware FortiGate can be broken down into up to 10 virtual FortiGates, what we call VDOMs. Each one of these virtual FortiGates can have its own switch fabric. All right, there's this one, DC1, DC2's got its own switch fabric, DC3 has got its switch fabric. All right, have its own VLANs, its own access points, its own LTEs. So if, for example, let's use a real-world example. Let's say you were a company, a building control and automation company that manages building estates throughout the world. And you want to provide multi-tenancy network, secure networking service to your customers within that building. So let's say you had a 10-story building. You could have a VDOM per floor, a switch and wireless access infrastructure per floor for each one of those customers. And each one of those customers would get their own security, complete security services with IPS, URL filtering, all the rest of application control, all these other services. And that would be 100% unique to those customers. Okay, and each one of those VDOMs could have its own egress, its direct internet access link, or they could share a common internet access link, but still be segmented from each other and highly secure from each other and have their own network infrastructure. Now, whether you did that in that example that I've used, where you're a service provider hosting multi-tenanted services, or whether you're in a single organization that requires segmentation across different business units, maybe you've acquired another company and you want to add them in to your domain, you can do it this way. And another great use case if for an acquisition is, let's say, for example, there's overlapping IP addresses between the different organizations. I can provide organization A, VDOM A, organization B, VDOM B, and I can use dual cone NAT to translate the same IP addresses such that they seem to be different. So once again, hopefully that was clear. It was meant to be a short video. There was so much more that I could go into, but you know what I would suggest, if you've got any other queries regarding Fortilink, is to reach out to your local Fortinet SE, and by all means ask them for a demo environment. Our field staff are always more than happy to assist serious customers with a demo environment for a short period of time, a month, 2 months, where you can actually play with this stuff. Play with a FortiGate, play with a FortiSwitch, play with a FortiAP, see just how easy and effective and powerful this is, and realize firsthand what it can bring to your organization. So once again, thank you very much for your time.